It's 10 o'clock. Jennifer, do we want to get started?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay. I will be looking this way as well so that I can see you. I'm on two screens. This is blended learning from a fifth grade teacher's perspective. Okay. My name is Jennifer Dandrojero. I am a fifth grade monolingual teacher at Lancaster. I will be presenting with Tessa Ramos. She is my math and science coach there at Lancaster. So welcome. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I have been teaching 17 years. I taught 6 years in fourth grade, and then I taught 2 years in third grade, and I've been a fifth grade teacher for 9 years now, and 8 of those years have been at Lancaster. Just a quick makeup of my class. I have 20 students in my class. 2 are GT. I have 2 that are 504. I have 2 LEP denials, and then I have 5 RTI. So I have a combination of students in my class. Okay, I wanted to start with a quote. This was created by my class. We call ourselves the Gang of Greatness, and their motto is just keep moving. And I'll explain more about how we came about that later. So our agenda for today, this is all going to relate to my classroom and how things are working in our room. So first, we're going to articulate the why, and then the how, the best practices for blended learning, and the what, shifting teaching to blended learning, and then what blended learning looks like in our classroom, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. So the big concept, the goal of blended learning is to combine active engaged learning online with active engaged learning in the classroom to give students more control over the time, place, path, and pace of their learning. So here, what I'd like you to do is, based on this quote, reflect on your own classroom. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel about engaging your students both online and offline? And do they have control of their learning? So if you could please kind of respond in the chat box, that would be great.
Sorry.
Yes, you were muted.
Sorry, I was just going to say 5, of course, is if you're very comfortable with it, and 1 if you're kind of just testing the waters, getting started.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a few are putting that they feel, reflecting on that quote, they're about a 3 right now.
Okay. So a lot in the middle.
Right.
Okay.
Would someone like to share how you rated yourself, why you feel, if you're a 3, what may be something that you're incorporating that you're strong at, and something that you would really like to kind of focus on to grow in that area? If you want to share, you can just unmute your mic. And if not, if I could have Ms. Beltran, can you share why you rated yourself a 3?
I was going to go ahead and jump in, Tessa. You caught me. So I just finished doing the kindergarten blended learning sharing. And I've been doing blended learning for about 4 or 5 years now. And I still feel at a 3 because I feel like I've gotten the hang of what blended learning is and how the menus work and how to tweak things whenever I see it's not working for my students, when to introduce things of that nature. But I'm still feeling like I have a lot of room to grow as far as giving my students a little bit more independence, or of knowing how to be more aware of their data. So they know they have the data, they know I'm high, I'm low, but now I want to work on getting them to specifically know, okay, these 3 words are the ones I'm working on. This unit is the one that I'm struggling with, so that they can go ahead and be more independent, proactive in their learning.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Ms. Beltran.
Thank you. So yes, I mean, part of blended learning is being flexible and being reflective. So we'll go through that as we go on in the presentation. Okay, so here's the golden circle of blended learning. And this is really a business model, but it works in education as well. When we talk about the why, we're going to be talking about the traditional teaching methods versus blended learning. The how, for me, the how is how I go through the process of grouping my students, what occurs, what happens during my guided reading and my past interventions, and then what happens in my ELAR workstations. And the what is just creating a classroom culture, and it's a community of learners. And then motivating my students to be reflective and taking ownership of their learning. So we'll go through each one of these. So the golden circle of blended learning, this is the why. So here what I want to do is I'll reveal these one at a time, and I want you to type T in the chat box if you think the method is traditional teaching, and B if you think it's a blended learning method. Okay, so our first one is it's teacher-led, teacher-paced instruction. Okay. Okay, our next one, focus on collaboration. T if it's traditional, B if it's blended. Right, okay. Our next one, data-driven, competency-based learning. Okay, so we know our blended and we know our traditional. I'll just show a few more here and then we'll move on. Flexible learning environments. Exactly. So we're all pretty familiar with what blended learning looks like. And for me, here are all the answers. With traditional teaching, it's teacher-led, teacher-paced instruction. It's one size fits all. The teacher is the one controlling the learning environment. We focus on compliance. Work is characterized by conformity, traditional cumulative grading system. But with blended learning, it's student-centered, student-paced learning. It's personalized. There's flexible learning environments. We focus on collaboration. Work is characterized by creativity, and it's data-driven, competency-based learning. So when I first started teaching 17 years ago, for me, I was doing traditional teaching. I mean, that's the way my mentor teachers were doing things. And, you know, I guess my kids were in cooperative groups, but it was kind of a blanket instruction. What I taught everybody. The way I taught it is the way I taught it to everyone. And yes, I had kiddos who showed growth, but then others who kind of didn't move at all or regressed. And so I really had to take a look at myself, you know, because I was doing the same thing year after year after year, and my kids weren't aware of their data, of their progress or lack thereof. And so I knew that things needed to change. We started blended learning at our campus, I want to say 4 years ago, but initially I was not chosen to be a blended learning teacher. They had a few teachers that they chose, and they were actually on the ELAR cadre. And so they were the ones who visited schools and they were trying to implement, and then they would bring it back to the rest of the grade level and to the school. So when I was setting up my classroom the following year, my principal asked me, well, would you like to try blended learning? And I told him, yeah, sure, why not? I told her I really didn't know much about it, but I knew things needed to be different for my kiddos. So I jumped right in and I started with one subject. And so as we, you know, have moved on during time here, the last few years, I've incorporated more and more of it. So I'll show you some of that later on in the presentation. So the golden circle of blended learning, this is the why. And so this is some of what blended learning looks like in our classroom. These are some of the components. The first one I have is flexible seating, and which is exactly where I started. To me, that seemed like the easiest thing to do. So this will take a second to load. So this is part of my data wall, and I will show you later on the entire wall. But here I had to start with I gave them a contract, and we talked about what the flexible seating was going to look like in blended learning, what they needed to do. I modeled it for them. My instructions were clear, they were concise. I showed them where to access the flexible seating, how to use it, and when to return it, where to return it. So that's the wall with the rules. And you can see here that part of our flexible seating, we have lap trays, we have clipboards. I use these cookie sheets, which I bought like at the dollar store, because they can use them with dry erase markers. And then down here, I have my whiteboards. Then this is kind of the front of my classroom. You can see here that I bought these little, we call them beach chairs. And I have 4 of those that I had purchased through at Target for like $10. And then here I have yoga mats that I cut in half. And so, you know, kids can use those as well. We have the stability balls. These little block chairs I actually found in our cafeteria when we were remodeling, and a lot of people were getting rid of things, and they got rid of these. And I thought, oh, well, I picked them up. It was like a garage sale. Here we have our colored stools, and then here are more of our stability balls. So like I said, this is my data wall. And it takes up the entire back wall of my classroom, but kids know exactly what is going on here. So here we have, again, the flexible seating. I have my Imagine Math tiers with their names on there. This is my iStation, and they're, again, grouped according to tiers. This one is the one that you can get off of iStation, and I color code it for them. And then up here is my AR. And so here's if they've met their points for the week. We track attendance. And then these are our checkpoints. So we create a class goal for checkpoints. Here again, I color code for them how they scored on the checkpoints. And then here is the learning standard breakdown. And I note the standards that were tested. And I'll show you that more later. And then here are our workstations. I have them for technology, and then this is our math, and then here is where I have my ELAR, and over here we have the reading groups. Right here we have the docking station for their laptops, and over here I have, if anything taught me, I learned through COVID last year, it was that we had to go completely digital. So I used to have my workstations in bins, and so on top of the bin I have the objective. And then on the inside, I have the instructions. And if they're going to work on a reading passage, then the reading passage was in there. So going through COVID, everything we had to go online. So I created a digital data wall, and I have also my workstations in my Google Classroom. And in these bins are task cards and different activities based on standards. Let me see what else I was going to show you there. I think it's just kind of, so here again is where if they met their AR goals for the week, they get happy faces if they do. And at the end of the 9 weeks, if they've met their goal every single day or every single week, then I usually will buy them a gift card to McDonald's or something like that. But if they met the goal at the end of the 9 weeks, maybe like this kiddo didn't meet it 2 weeks, but then they met it here. sometimes we'll do like a pancake breakfast or things like that for them. So they do get rewarded in some way, but most of their motivation, you'll see in a bit, is intrinsic. Here we track attendance. We track whether they're present, they were tardy or they left early, or they were absent. And then here is just my class average. These are the checkpoints. You can see here that I note if they need help and I'm not available, that they can go see the green and the blue people. And again, here's the standards that were tested and what each one is. And then that's just my entire wall. So as I was saying, we have our physical data binders and our physical data wall, but we also have our digital data wall. So I just kind of wanted to show you that really quickly. And I think this for the kiddos, I continued using it after COVID when we returned back to school, because I think it's really important for them to see it, especially, and I use this also because parents are not in my classroom. And, you know, I see them maybe a couple of parent-teacher conferences. Yes, we communicate, but I think it's really important that parents know exactly what's going on so they can get into the Google Classroom and they can see how their children are doing as well. So you can just see how kids will start to notice the same colored names, who's tardy, who's present, who's absent. You know, November was a hard month for us. You can see we had a lot of tardies, a lot of absences. So I tell the kiddos, you know, it's part of you know, the YISD. You need to be here every day, all day, so that you can learn. We track our iStation, and I've seen that people track it differently. This was courtesy of one of my grade level colleagues. She's new to our campus, and so she brought this to us. So what we do with this one is the kiddos track their iStation after they take the iSip, and this is just an example, the first slide. And so the kiddos go through and they track their data, and let me see. If anybody is in the red, for example, let's say on this slide for vocabulary, this student was in the red. So then they come over here and they look at the vocabulary strategies. These are some of the things that they can do. So they're going to choose one that they commit to doing because it'll help them grow. And then from there, they track it here. Let me show you. So this is August, and I have it in English and in Spanish. I teach monolingual, but so let's say the student was tier 3 in vocabulary. They create a goal and then they put in the strategy that they're going to use, and they have to commit to using it. So this is also great because parents can see this as well. They can go into the Google Classroom and they can see, okay, how did you do? Let's see, we need to work on this strategy. You said you were going to work on it, so let's get to it. I also, let me go back to my classroom. I like to color code everything because it shows the kiddos where they are and where they're going. So we have our Imagine Math, and here we put it, you know, in the quartiles. And I'm going to share this presentation with you so that you can go back and look through it. But obviously we have our advanced, our proficient, our basic, our below basic, and our far below basic. And yes, some of my kiddos fell back. And so I need to, you know, sit there and discuss with them what it is, you know, is going on. What can we do to help you improve? But then you can see kids who have moved out. So the color is the initial beginning of year Imagine Math, and then where they're at now is the middle of year. So you can see this kiddo was in the red beginning of year, and now he's moved all the way to yellow. And so I put this on there as well so that they can see how many minutes they need. So it's on my back wall, but it's also in the classroom. And I do that for everything. So I have my ELAR assessments, I have my math, and I have my science. Again, I'll just show you here. We color code so that they can see where they're at. And like I said, this is on our wall in the back as well. And these are a bit different. Let it load. Okay, so here is checkpoint 1. So these are the aware documents. So this one just shows how they did in the first checkpoint, whether they were approaches, meets, masters. Here is the learning standard breakdown. And then here I type out the TEKS that were being tested so they know exactly what they do. I need to work on. But what I think is most powerful is that you can just see here from checkpoint 1 to checkpoint 2 how much growth there has been. Right here we had 4 red and now we're down to 1. Here we only had a few blue and all of a sudden we have all of these. So the kids are tracking their growth. And I think it's really important because it shows them they're taking ownership of their learning. So I have that for ELAR, I have it for math, and I have it for science. And then our workstations, you saw where we have them posted in the back. So everything is just back there. Okay. So now we're going to get into the how. So this is a process of grouping students in my classroom. Before I even receive my kiddos, you get your roster. School hasn't started yet. But for me, what I do right away is I look at their 4th grade STAR data because that's going to tell me their areas of strength and struggle. From there, I group my students. So from day 1, I already have them in groups. And then, of course, I use the iStation, the beginning of year, because that one allows me to see where they're at as far as their tiers are concerned. It tiers them, and then it allows me to give them the interventions that they need. And of course, they get their own individual pathways that they can follow. From then on, I look at the monthly reading with ISIP assessments, and then we group, change them according to their tiers. I also look at the Accelerated Reader or AR beginning of year STAR diagnostic test because that one gives me their zone of proximal development, and it also gives me their instructional reading level. So again, this is how I begin the school year, but as time goes on, of course, my groups change and their needs change. All of a sudden, maybe they've been working really hard and so they've mastered a standard, or they've moved out of a tier, or they've just made progress. So then, of course, I need to change groupings as well, and workstations. So here, again, are my checkpoints. What we do here is we color in checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, so forth, so on. Let me close all of these out. Okay. Then we look at the unit assessments and the reading interim assessments and the math interim. I will just show you our reading. And Ms. Ramos, if you can just jump in here since you helped create this one, then we can talk about it.
Sure thing. So we wanted to do something that would be a visual for the kiddos to be able to see their growth, because that's what we're striving for. Each child is striving to grow, especially now with our HB45 kiddos. We wanted to see, okay, where did you end up as a 4th grader on STAR, and how much have you grown since we took the interim? So that's what we're measuring here. And so what we did was we looked at their 4th grade STAR scores, and this one's for reading. We did it both for reading and math. And wherever they fell in fourth grade, we went ahead and we color coded and wrote their scale score on a Post-it. So Ms. Dunn, if you can circle, let's look at Marco O, for example.
Yes.
Marco O right there. As a fourth grader, he approached because he's on a yellow Post-it and his scale score was 1492. So Marco can clearly see, okay, now as a fifth grader on my interim one, I scored a 1601. So he's growing, especially because the rigor has grown from fourth grade to fifth grade. And now he's at meets. If you move over to Daniel P's Post-it, if we look at Daniel P, he approached in fourth grade on STAR. Now he's already mastering. So tremendous, tremendous growth. And even the ones that are in red, on the red Post-it that did not meet, we can clearly see there, Chloe. If you look at Chloe, she had an 1148 scale score as a fourth grader. As a fifth grader, she's at a 1406. So she's close and she's moving. So we thought that this was a great visual, and we just created it on a Jamboard. And we can also print them out and put them up on the data wall so kids can be seeing their growth.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Ramos.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so based on all of this data is how I create my stations and the differentiation. So as a fifth grade teacher, I do not do guided reading the way lower grades do, where they're working on phonics and they're working on all of those things. My guided reading is standards based. So I take a look at it and I see which kiddos, for example, missed 5.3B, whatever it is. And so those kiddos are the ones that I bring in and I work with, and you'll see kind of a snippet of that later on. If it's, let's say, a passage that we're working on and it was author's purpose and message, then my focus will be on that. But then I'm also incorporating the metacognition strategies. I'm also incorporating test taking strategies with them. And it's a lot of discussion. So guided reading for me is standards based. And then of course we have on my campus, we have pass intervention during the school day, and that one is for math. So I meet my kiddos 3 times a week for 45 minutes. And then we have Step Up to Literacy, which is the reading intervention. And that one is after school, 45 minutes as well. And that is for ELAR. And so with both of those, I start with the fourth grade because that's where they did not meet those standards. And then I eventually move into the fifth grade and what it looks like for us. And then my ELAR stations are the same thing. So let's say they didn't do well on author's purpose and message. So I can't just automatically throw it into a station and expect them to do well if they didn't on the exam. So what I do is I work with that group again. We maybe I'll put videos on there so that they can refer back to it because I have to remediate, and then I'll throw it into the station. So the what? This is the shifting teaching to blended learning. So at the beginning of the presentation, I showed you my kiddos class motto, and it's just keep moving. And this came about because I wanted to see, how can we create this classroom culture? How can we create this community of learners? And so what I do, I work really, really hard to build a rapport with my kiddos because I think it's all about relationships. But Ms. Ramos at the beginning of this school year when we were in professional development had shown us this video. And I'm just going to show you a little snippet of it because this is how I created the culture in my classroom.
That's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something?
So I presented this to my kiddos and we talked about it, and we said, I asked them, guys, what's going on here? And they're like, oh my God, they're stuck on an elevator. And so we talked about even the way they were with each other. I don't know if you noticed, but they're talking to each other, but they aren't even looking at each other. And then, they're not problem solving together. They didn't sit there and, she asks for a phone and he says, whatever he said, he doesn't have one. But they never looked at each other. They did not work together to figure out what they needed to do. So I posed that to my kids. What should they have done? Well, they should have just kept going forward. Some of them said, they should have run up the escalator, whatever it was. But as a class, we came up with the motto, we just keep moving. And so they sing it along, just keep swimming. So that became our class motto. From there, you saw that our class is called the Gang of Greatness. And I want them to feel like they are great, that they can accomplish all of these things. You saw in my interim that I still have kiddos, a lot of kiddos in the did not meet. But if you notice, they are showing growth. And that's what we talk about. We just need you to show growth. Maybe you're not going to make it out of the did not meet, but you need to show growth. So that's how we came up with our class name. And then another way that I created this culture in my classroom is we have a walk-in song. So my principal had done this for us. I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before. We have weekly newsletters that she puts out. And she had asked us for a Google form and, say, if you could walk into a stadium, and I posed this to my kids as well. You can walk into a stadium, in baseball, when somebody's going up to bat, they have a walk-in song. And I tell them, the WWE wrestlers or boxers or MMA people, they walk in to a song. What would your song be? So I created a Padlet for them. And so they put in their song. And I said, okay, it has to be clean. It has to be appropriate, but what would you want yours to be? So every morning I play someone's walk-in song. And so all of this just makes them feel like this is my classroom. These are my classmates. Do we fight? Yes. Do we disagree? Yes, but we're like a family. And so I think that was most important initially, is to create this classroom culture. And then obviously it's taking ownership of their learning and motivating them to be reflective learners. As I said, some of it, yes, I do reward them, with, like I said, breakfast, or the gift cards, whatever it might be. But for the most part, it's intrinsic. And so I'm going to show you here 2 videos. I had a visit from Miss Osuna, Norma Osuna, and so she came in and she recorded my class. And so this is her talking to a couple of my kiddos.
Data binder where we could keep track of our ice station and all of our goals that we have. This is one of our goals for ELAR. My goal is to get 100 next time for our reading checkpoint. And for math is to get a 65 next time on my reading checkpoint. And how will I know how I arrived, how success looks like is it will feel great, and I will know when I've arrived when I do the next checkpoint, because I wouldn't ask more questions to myself on how I did this and stuff.
So what is your plan for achieving that goal?
How I would try to achieve it was we could do the math programs that the school lets us do, like ST Math. It focuses on decimals and 4 operation word problems and 1 problem, which is what the test was mainly about, where you do more than 1 operation. And for our ELAR is our goal for what we got. I got a 94, and so I added 6 points so I can get 100 next time. And for math, I didn't do very well on it because I wasn't focusing enough, is what I think, and I got a 57.
Okay, so which standards do you need to get better at?
It says it right here. I need to get better at 5.1b, which is using a problem-solving model, and 5.1f, which is analyzing mathematical relationships to connect and communicate mathematical ideas. And I would focus most on 5.4b because it's represent and solve multi-step problems involving 4 operations with whole numbers using equations and variables. I would focus on that one the most because they showed that we had to do that a lot in the test, and it also shows an R because that means like it's gonna do that in the next checkpoint. That's the problem gonna be showing the most at the most.
It's a readiness standard,
Yes.
and it's highly tested, huh?
Yes, it's
So that
highly.
means it's a very important one.
Yeah, and I like to work on the radius ones first because it's gonna show that the most. I can bring my grade up a lot.
Do you get to choose which ones you work on first and next?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So we could like at home we have to wait for an hour and do SC Math. We have to do our minutes, and on Imagine Math, it depends if you're on like above, below, or like stuff like that. And I only have to do 30 minutes, but all of us have to do 2 lessons past each week. Some of us, our teachers says that they're having competition, so you can do like more than 2 to like get yourself ready for the next checkpoint.
So do you feel stronger in reading or in math?
And reading, because I feel like I like to read a lot. Like I read at least 2 chapter books like in 2 weeks, and I feel like reading when the questions come is the easiest because you just eliminate the ones that didn't happen in the book, and the one that did happen, you just like you know it because the other 3 are like they're like made up. Yes, and then I also have my science, which I did the most at. I got 100, and my goal for next time is to stay at 100. So either like get lower, and then I also have what I need to work on. I don't need to work on anything because I got 100, and I got masters. I also have ELAR. I think what I need to work on. I think I need to work on 5.10a because I got an 83% and the rest were 100s. 5.10b is analyze how the use of text structure contributes to the author's purpose. So I need to work on that one the most.
So at what point do you work on that specific standard? How do you get better at that?
That's why for homework we have reading for an hour at home. We also have iStation. There's like this guy called Mr. Marco, and he helps us do like office purpose and text structure and stuff like
Does
that.
your teacher assign like special work for you so that you can get better on that standard?
Yeah, we have assignments that we have to complete this week. Some of them are like reading and science.
So are some of the work you have, is it different from what your friends have?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
All of our test scores are different. Because like we don't have the same, not all of us have the exact same brain, so some of us might learn different ways, we might do things different, like different strategies that I use.
And does your data look exactly like your friends?
No,
No.
because we have different brains, and some of my friends are like a little smarter than me, or like they use different strategies. Like I have a friend named Daniel, and he does division different than me.
Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am, because when we usually work together, and when he does it differently, we usually end up with the same answer.
And So do you feel like, okay, you said right now you have a friend that's smarter than you, but you seem like a very smart young lady. Can you get smarter
Yes,
in
ma'am.
this
If I
class? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. If I focus more and I do my work harder and I don't talk as much because I talk a lot and because I'm a person, like I'm a people person. I like to talk a lot and well, my mom always says it's good, but I need to slow down on the talking because I talk too much and then my talking will get in the way of my grades.
So did you set a goal for that? To try and limit your amount of talking?
Yes, ma'am. We have it on our computer.
Yeah.
We have everything that's in here is also digital, and we also have like some extra stuff like how am I doing? I have like this side where how am I doing, and there's like 4 squares, and it says that one of them is I'm growing in, but I can still improve, and I put my talking because I'm.
Can you show me that?
Yes, ma'am. I will go down the
So what I really like about Michael is that he is a people person, just like he said, but he understands his data, and you'll find that in my classroom, my tier 3s, my tier 2s, my tier 1, they all know their data. They're all very reflective in their thinking, and they try their hardest. So I won't play Tyler's on there. I will share this with you, and you can go back and look at it, just for the sake of time. So as I said, based on what we do as individuals, we have our class percentages. And so we create the class goals for the checkpoints. And here you can see, let me just read you what we have here. On checkpoint 1, our class average was 80, but as a class, we created a goal of 85% for checkpoint 2. Well, checkpoint 2 came along and our class average was 88, which we exceeded our goal. And so for checkpoint 3, the kiddos decided that they wanted to create a goal of 93%. Math here, our first checkpoint was tough. We got a 52% as a class, but we decided to create a goal of 57%. Our math checkpoint 2, we grew to 70%. So the kiddos decided that for checkpoint 3, their goal was going to be 75%. And then for science, our first checkpoint, we did great. We got an 89%. And so we created a goal of, it was 89%, and we created a goal of 94. But then checkpoint 2 came along, and we went all the way down to 65% as a class. So we created a goal of 70% for checkpoint 3. Now, you can see how the kiddos are growing in reading and math, and they are growing in science too. But what happened with my science? Well, from what I understand, it was the questions were more difficult, the concepts were harder, and the rigor was higher. So as a teacher, I need to obviously reflect on that, but make my lessons and my workstations more rigorous as well. So that, it's eye-opening for all of us. And the kiddos, like I said, take ownership. When we create these goals, I tell them, guys, it has to be attainable. And it's something, that we can do. 5 points is great. If you want to do 10 points, then do 10 points. It's totally up to you. But remember, it has to be achievable.
Sorry.
And so with Michael, for example, he mentioned that he was at 100 and his goal was to stay at 100. And to me, that's challenging in itself because he's being tested on different standards. So yes, he mastered the standards of checkpoint 1, but he's also going to need to master standards of checkpoint 2. And then this is what it looks like in our classroom. And these are just short videos. I decided to just kind of show you what my classroom looks like without my kiddos in it. You saw in Michael's video, kids are moving around, they're working in groups, but this is what the classroom looks like. And in the front here, the kiddos put in their agendas in their respective bins. Our objectives are here. That's our our calendar map. And then I post the agenda every day. Then that's our library. And again, that's our data wall in the back. And right there, we have our headphone docking station. And so I try to make my classroom inviting and warm for the kiddos, very colorful. And so here, during the showcase visit, Ms. Osuna and a cameraman came in and they kind of recorded different components of our ELAR block. So here I have kiddos working, working with them. And like I said, here I was working with author's purpose, and author's purpose and message was
And something necessary for farms.
Mm-hmm. That was the southern. And what did the northern have?
The northern colonies had some important parts.
Ports. Exactly. Now let me ask you something. Why do you suppose they put this map here and they didn't put it in the back, or they didn't put it right next to this one, this paragraph?
Because it's good. Because I think this whole one before we flip, I think this whole one here belongs, or probably the story belongs to this.
Okay. What do you think?
Or it's probably like talking about the map and all the.
So even though my target was author's purpose and message, I asked them about text features, and I brought in, you know, inferencing and things like that, because I think all of those things can be addressed during that time. And then here are my ELAR workstations. This one, like I said, I have it digitally, and then I have it physically in the classroom. So you see girls here working on AR, some are reading a book,
Okay,
some
I'm
are
gonna read
reading
about the
ebooks.
New England. Okay. Mm-hmm.
There were small farms in New Zealand, but no big farms.
Southern.
Okay, and then here I have the kiddos that were at that back table were working on social studies. So for that one, I presented them with a couple of videos to watch, and then they worked on a passage together. I always have independent reading AR, because in order for your classroom to be blended, you have to have at least one online station. And one of them is my independent reading. That one's online, offline, because like I said, they can read either ebooks or they can read library books, and then they'll take the AR tests, which is just basic comprehension, but they're applying their metacognitive strategies. And I make them, you know, we ask them to verify with text evidence on passages, on tests, on whatever it is. And so with AR, I have them verify their answers in their book, because that is going back to look for text evidence. Then we had that writing station, and every week we have the data binders iStation. So in that one, they update their data, even if it's just attendance. And I usually will sit with those kiddos, and then from there they go into iStation, where I can have assignments for them, or you know, they just work on their time. And then here, I think we're almost out of time, I have Michael and Tyler again explaining their data. And I also have my interview with Ms. Osuna, if you'd like to view that as well. She asked a lot of great questions. And, you know, one of them was, what do you say to someone who's new to blended? And so what I would say is that you need to start small. I started with a flexible seating. Like I said, I modeled it for them. My instructions were clear and concise. And then I just started with one subject. And so we started with the reading. And that one was so easy to me because we had iStation. So that's already differentiated as well. And then from there, you can start, looking for other stations. I have been very blessed to work with grade levels and colleagues, my friends, who we collaborate and we work together and we create these stations together. And so that has helped a lot, but you need to be flexible. I know Ms. Beltran earlier had mentioned how some things worked for her and some things didn't. And that happens all the time. It happens within the same year. And so you have to be willing to be flexible, and you need to see, what it is that you can do, because really it comes down to, it's all about the kids and for them to show progress. And like my kiddos say, to just keep moving. And what I did here is I provided you with links and PDFs, whatever it is that you need that you saw maybe you can use in your classroom. The first two, the flexible seating anchor charts and the attendance calendar, I purchased those through Teachers Pay Teachers. So I have the link there for you. And then I have the AR monthly goal and the actual sheet. That one I didn't get to show you, but the kiddos create their own goals for iStation based on how they did. They have their actual, and then they create the goal for the next month. And so they go from there. Then I have the reading averages for you for class, the class average, the iStation triangles, and these down here, you'll see if you go back to look at Michael's video, we have these online. These are in our digital data binder. So they have their goals, their progress, they're sharing my work, glowing and growing. So they look at their glows, and then they look at their grows. And then I used to think, and now I think, and all of these I got from, I did the blended learning modules with Catlin Tucker. And so these are hers. And so this is my class. It was so great coming back, after some of them had been gone 16 months. And so it was great to see them in school. We were all happy to be back. And this is why I do what I do. Is it daunting? Sometimes. Is it overwhelming? Sometimes. But it is so worth it when you see how much they've grown. And we have just a few minutes before we need to move on. So are there any questions? Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.